Good evening, everyone. My name is Claude Sharadi from Africa Media Australia, and this is the very first edition of this new show that we started that we call African Knowledge. It's designed to enable various members of the community to share their knowledge on any issue of importance in the community. We know that there's a vast amount of knowledge that community members across the country in Australia do have, but we don't always have the platform to be able to share that. And Africa Media has decided to provide a platform where many people will be encouraged to share their knowledge on any number of issues that affect the community. Tonight, we'll be talking about COVID-19 vaccines. Obviously, COVID remains an important matter for the community right now. Anecdotal reports suggest that there's still quite a high rate of vaccine hesitancy within the African Australian communities. People are not taking the vaccines, and there are many reasons for that. We're going to try to go through that with my guest tonight. So with me today, I have two members of the African Australian community. They are all doctors. I have Dr. Kalumba Kongolo, who is in Melbourne. He's a pediatrician. I'll give him the opportunity to introduce himself soon. And we also have Dr. Jean-Pascal Tshamala, who is in Sydney. And they are both experienced doctors who've been working in Australia for a number of times. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Clive.
Good evening. Yeah, too.
Thank you for making yourself available for tonight's edition of African Knowledge. Dr. Kalumba, I'll start with you. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional background.
Thank you, Claude. I am a doctor from African origin, from Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm a pediatrician and pediatric hematologist who train here
Australia, and this
Australia.
is the very first edition of this.
I'm a pediatrician and pediatric hematologist. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So I work in different hospitals within Australia, including Pascal Hospital, Peter Mark Cancer Center, and Melbourne Pathology. Actually, for the moment, I'm a director of Surface Melbourne Pediatrics, and I have strong interest. I'm also I have a strong interest in what's happening with COVID, and currently I'm a chair of Africa Medical Body of Australia, AMBA in Sydney. And we've been following with interest what's happening with COVID, particularly with relation to Africa. So it will be interesting night to discuss about this important issue.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kalumba. Now I'll go to Dr. Jean-Pascal. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Jean-Pascal. I'm a medical doctor. I trained at the University of Lubumbashi, and then I migrated to Australia in 2007. I trained in pediatric at Sydney Children's Hospital in Sydney, and I'm in my final stage of becoming a pediatrician. Currently, I'm working at Fairfield Hospital as a pediatric registrar, and I have interest in COVID.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll go straight into it, and let me remind those who are watching us tonight. We will ask you to ask questions about the safety and the benefits or any issue that relates to the COVID vaccine. We know that many members in the community are taking their vaccines. Some others are not, and they have a number of objections or hesitations. We're trying to go through that. We get these two professionals to try to enlighten us a little bit on this issue. I'll start with you, Dr. Kalumba. Can you tell us the number of vaccines that we have available against COVID-19? I think there's about 3 or 4. Is there?
No, there are more than 3 and 4. So basically, there's in Australia we have about 2, AstraZeneca and and Pfizer, and we have a third one that's been authorized by TGA a couple of days ago, which is a Moderna. So, so to make it simple, there are two types of vaccine. There's mRNA vaccine, which is Pfizer and Moderna, and we have adenovirus bacterial vaccine, which is AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. But there's some other vaccine. There is a Chinese vaccine, Sinovac, and there's a Russia vaccine, and there's so many other vaccines. But in most Western countries, basically the main four vaccine being used are Pfizer, Moderna, which is an mRNA vaccine, and then AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. So that in summary, those four vaccines are mainly used. But in Australia at the moment, we have two have been used, Pfizer vaccine and AstraZeneca vaccine. And the third one has been approved by the Therapeutic and Good Administration, which is Moderna, which is going to be used in days to come or weeks to come.
Okay, so there's a lot more. I think there's even a Chinese one and an Indian one and a Russian one as well.
Correct. Yes. So there's several other vaccine there, but those vaccine hasn't been haven't applied for assessment in most Western countries, so haven't been used. So they mainly used, as I said, the 4 has been used most Western countries, and this Chinese and the Russian has been used in a Western country, haven't been for use, but they've been used in some parts of Africa and Asia as well.
Thank you very much. Again, another reminder to those watching us, please put your questions in the comment. If you also if you have a question that you would like to ask through telephone or even video, audio visual option, we can invite you in the studio and you can ask that question or may make a comment. But put the your questions as comments and we will get the guests to answer. Dr. Jean-Pascal, now I'm assuming all of these vaccines work approximately the same. They use the same principle in addressing the virus, or are they different?
Yeah, well, they are different in the way they act in the body, but ultimately the goal is to stimulate the immunity, to get the immunity ready for the subsequent infection, if ever you get in contact with infection. So as Dr. Kalumba said, there are two main type of the vaccine. So there's an mRNA vaccine, which actually send the code to the body. In the past, vaccine were a fragment of the bacteria that they introduce in the body to stimulate the immune system. They've changed that. Now they're sending a messenger, a code, that code for the spike protein for the COVID, so that the immune system can attack that spike protein and get ready in terms of antibodies to fight subsequent infection. That's the new technology. In fact, it's not that new. It has been around for the last 10, 15 years. The second type is, yes, they're sending a code, but the vehicle is different. So the mRNA vaccine used the nanoparticle. Remember that name have generated a lot of controversy. So the nanoparticle is just a small fat that they've embedded the code inside that help the vaccine to go inside the cell. And then you have the different one, which use a virus, an adenovirus, a chimpanzee adenovirus. They use the chimpanzee adenovirus because the human body is not used to that, so that it can react. So the vehicle with that adenovirus goes inside the cell, and then the code is displayed inside the cells, and then the spike protein is made by the cell, and the immune system fight the infection. So those are the two main ones, but they are different type of way of administering those vaccines. So I've just given you the two main ways of those.
If I can just add to the last one, so the adenovirus, so they use the adenovirus modified. So there's one who use chimpanzee, as Dr. Jean-Pascal has said, that's AstraZeneca, and there's the one who use recombinant, which is a Johnson & Johnson. But they're all based on the adenovirus DNA vaccine.
Okay, that's well understood. Now let's go into the issue of vaccine hesitancy. There's still a high degree of vaccine hesitancy within African Australian communities, as well as within Black communities in the US, and not to mention Africa. Why do you think that is the case?
You asking the question, or is Dr.
I'm
Kalumba?
asking the question that you can, any one of you can take it.
So, I think there are a number of factors. Maybe Kalumba will add some more. So the first one, I think it's normal that because it's a new vaccine, something has come so quickly, people are not used to it, and people rightfully are hesitant. But the main issue here is to give the information to people, explaining to them what actually is happening, and then try and build up confidence to that. The second issue is there's a lot of information that is available on the net that are not accurate. Unfortunately, some people are surfing on the fear that generates some very rare side effect that happen with the vaccination. And the fact that the vaccination were done very quickly, people assume that this have been rushed through. Although, if you look at the process, it's just that the people who were making the vaccine had it very easy to recruit people because we were in the middle of a pandemic, and the platform were there, but they follow all the safety measures for the vaccine. And in fact, in the end, it turns out like they are quite good vaccine with good result on the ground. So there are many factors. The other factors is, for instance, lack of information. So like in Africa, for instance, if there is a case, a side effect that is quite dramatic, it's portrayed on TV. I remember there was a case of a person who passed away that was shown on TV to people to say that 3 days after the vaccination, the person died. Although we don't know all the facts, but that creates a lot of fear into people. So those are the things that I think are making people to be hesitant with the vaccine. Also, we need to put in context that even in the US, when the pathology was, the pandemic was evolving, there was a lot of fear mongering, a lot of discussion about the use of the mask, whether the disease was true or not, whether it was human made or or natural. So all those factors combined together made the vaccine hesitancy quite high. But we're providing information, I think we can overcome that. I don't know whether Dr. Kalumba can add.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, so I think that was it is. So I think the main factor is that the accurate information is not reaching the people, unfortunately. So with the social media, there's so many information which are moving around, and most of them hasn't have any much of solid foundation for a solid basis. And but they are accessible to people, unfortunately. So, but the accurate information, the facts, hasn't been really been able to land on people's hand or people's brain, unfortunately. So probably one of the main factors, and secondly, there's also lack of leadership, which I would add, particularly in Africa. So there hasn't been a significant education program which is targeting to break those barrier. If we remember, I don't know if you were there when last video conference, we organized through AMBA, to African Medical Body of Australia. There was basically one of the presenters from South Africa who said, okay, some population has been basically abandoned in terms of social support, but suddenly people come and offering them free vaccine, and the question they're asking whether this is genuine or not, or they want to kill us. So what's the information which are not true is basically just available to people, unfortunately, and that makes things difficult. So the education is one of the things, because even here, people are here, although there are some website from the state government or federal government, but people are not able to go and look for the right information, and they will prefer to get it from social media, which is particularly easy. So one of the presenters again on the same conference, the 12th of September, from Zambia, presented that we need to get the information to people. We need to get probably to social media as well and compete with people who are giving misinformation. So I think that's probably the way. So things like this to be important for people to follow, but I don't know how many people are following at the moment.
Thank you very much. We'll start taking some questions as they start coming from the audience. Again, I want to thank those who are already putting their questions. We got Jonasi and Kitui who have put some questions there. I'll take. I'll start with Kitui's one. You say, apart from the conspiracies perpetuated through the media, there is also the unknown long-term effect of this vaccine. That's a legitimate fear, so to speak. There is not enough data to show that long-term these vaccines are safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on. If you.
Yeah, it's a good question. People are always asking about long-term effect. The question is how long is how long? So most of the vaccine, the long-term side effects happen within 4-6 months. I have to make a comment first. When you get a vaccine or a medication or a treatment, you will not know. There's a degree, a percentage of things that you will not know. For this vaccine, for instance, only time will tell us whether there's 100% no long-term sequelae. But the guess that they took, it's an informed and estimated guess. They tried to look at all the long-term vaccine complications. How long do they take to happen? And they found that the majority of them happen within 4 to 6 months of getting the immunization. In fact, some people are saying two months after the immunization. So it's rare to have a side effect when you have an injection now, and after 4 years you get some side effect. So it's quite rare. I think they went through that and tried to find what is the shortest time that those long-term side effects can happen. Remember, this is have been done through a pandemic, which was killing up to 400 or 500,000 people a day. So there was a matter of urgency, but I don't think they cut corner in the long-term outcome. So in short, the long-term outcome usually comes within 4 to 6 months, according to some studies, within 2 months for others. I don't know if Kalumba has something to add.
Yeah. So look, it is a legitimate question to ask, what is the long term? And obviously there's no answer to that, no one knows. But in anything in medicine, so there's a risk and benefit balance. So you have to put on a balance risk benefit. So in the middle of a pandemic, with a disease which is spreading quite easily and also killing. So not forget about only killing, but also it's a need to protect the health system. If there's a number of people falling sick, a huge number of people falling sick, what will happen to the health system is going to collapse, because there'll be so many people in the hospitals and so many people in intensive care. So even those who don't have COVID, have some other disease, may not have access to the hospital. So it is important that that is protected. As Dr. Jean Pascal said, there was study, most of the study of the 4 major vaccines, there were like 30 to 60,000 people. Obviously, long term, we don't know, but most of them will be within 4-6 months. But we're not going to know, and that's why there's a monitoring of side effects and the reporting. So anyone who got the vaccine should be reporting. Like so far, there's 4 billion doses been administered in the worldwide. So people are encouraged to report the side effect. Not the only way we'll know, but if we don't take the vaccine, there's no way we're going to be able to function normally. because our health system is going to collapse, and so many people will die as well. So it's a risk balance. That's why they start with adults, and if there's no significant side effect, they are coming down to now like 12 years of age, and soon we'll go beyond.
Well,
And if I have to add one more, Clyde, if I may, the long-term side effect, for instance, for measles vaccination that is widely given in the world, some people can have some children can have febrile convulsions, but it's one in maybe in a million. For that, we don't stop giving measles to patients. So we need to balance, like Dr. Kalumba have said.
Yeah, we surely need to balance, but some of the tricky questions that we tend to hear from the community is the fact that there's been so much push for this vaccine. And when you realize that, for example, the vaccine doesn't prevent someone from getting the virus, it doesn't prevent someone from passing on that virus, it doesn't prevent someone from getting sick, although it does have some effect of minimizing the symptoms, so that the person who takes it may not suffer the harshest sort of side of the disease. Why is there a need to push so much everybody to take it while it doesn't prevent getting the virus or passing it on?
Yeah, I think we had this discussion many times. The aim of the vaccination for the COVID-19 was to prevent hospitalization and death. So in that front, the vaccine is delivered. So it's preventing hospitalization and death up to 98%. Now, when you do your studies, that's the major aim. But during the study, you can stumble upon unexpected result where you think there is some reduction in the symptoms. The vaccine, I don't think they were designed to stop someone passing the disease to another person. It was designed to stop hospitalization and death, and to make the disease a more milder form than it should be. So that argument of saying that we should not push for full immunization is wrong on many fronts. The first front is the one I told you, and the second front is the one that Dr. Kalumba was describing. You start to act on the public health to preserve your health system. For instance, there are many surgeries that have been cancelled throughout Australia because of the COVID-19. So many COVID-19 patients are occupying beds. Mind you, we need to keep a certain ratio of healthcare people compared to the patient. So obviously, if there are more patients, then the health system is stretched, and that can be have a knock-on effect on other patients who have cancer, for instance, who need surgery, who need a semi-urgent surgery that can result in death on those patients. So it's very important that a disease that affects directly your health should be acted upon. On another front, it has an economic toll as well. So if you look in Australia, per day, New South Wales is losing $300 million. And the loss over a month or a year, it's in $1 billion. So we are crashing our economy if we are not acting on the COVID, and we are not going to get the services that we need from the government, because the government will not have tax. So our health will deteriorate. Our work, many people are working from home, or many businesses have closed. So there are many knock-on effects of the COVID that I think vaccinating as many as possible of people is quite important. Reaching the 80% or 90% projection by Dorothy Institute, I think it's important.
And now that leads me to the question that I think Jonasi. Yeah, I'll let you comment in a moment, but sure. I'll add this question from Jonasi, who says that is it possible though to fight against a muting virus? Even though there's this push for vaccination, we're seeing that there's limited effectiveness of the vaccine when you have to deal with Delta and perhaps many other variants that may come further. So, Dr. Kalumba, you can address the previous question and this question together and tell us why there's so much of a push.
Yes, I think Dr. Pascal has given it. So look, vaccination disease, for which we don't have any weapon, we don't have any therapeutic weapon. We have no drugs which can cure the disease, and the disease itself is complex because not only when you have a disease, it's not the virus itself is going to kill you, but your body is going to produce more what we call cytokines, some chemicals. It's going to derange basically most of your system. So we have no therapy, and it's easy to contact the disease. You cannot let it go. You need to protect your system, the health system, and you need to protect the most vulnerable. So if we don't immunize people, it's going to be a chaos. We will see in the US what happened in the US. How many people died? And we've seen also what's happening in India. So, and this can happen anyway. So you don't want to reach that level where you've got a vaccine, you've shown that it prevents against moderate to severe disease and death. And up to now, most people are vaccinated. Very few, less than 0.001% could have severe disease or COVID when they are vaccinated. And the different vaccine had a different endpoint outcome. Like for Pfizer, for instance, it was just after 1 week after second dose. It's rare there's 0 case of moderate severe disease. So that is important. So you can still have a virus, but if you don't have moderate to severe disease, it's very just like a flu. And that's why we need to attain those level of immunity. Just remember that vaccine in the world, if there was any of a major achievement of medicine or preventive medicine, is vaccine. So it's preventing a lot of disease, which is still, like in Africa where there's no vaccine against some disease, it's still killing every day number of people. So the variant, yes, most vaccines so far, they are still working against the variant. People are still going to get the disease, will get sick. But if we don't immunize, of course, we're going to see more variant than variant. But at the moment, what the world is at its knees, we don't have treatment for COVID. Apart from experimental drugs, everyone is trying. It is the only tool now is a vaccine. And I would say this, particularly for those countries such as Africa, where you also have other measures. Of course, we still have to continue some other measures, distanciation, wearing masks was necessary, of course. But in the context of Africa, it's completely impossible to do all these things. And the vaccine is the only way out. When you have a vaccine at this large scale, it's never happened before. We expect there will be side effects. We expect there will be incident. We expect there will be death. But it doesn't mean that that's a failure of the vaccine. Our vaccine is improper. No, it does not. You look at how many people are experiencing, like the study from the US, I was reading today, out of all the vaccine, the death reported is 0.0019%. So it's the same as you talk about clot, which most people worry about. So the incidents are serious, yes, can be serious. That we expect that. If in any medication we have, today you go to hospital, give you antibiotics, you might have an anaphylactic reaction, and we can die as well. So there's always risk. But is the risk significant to basically lead to stopping the vaccination going away? No, at the moment.
Thank you, Dr. Kumba. Let me remind Dr. Pascal, I'll come back to you in a moment. Let me remind our listeners and everyone watching us, we would encourage you to ask questions. Put those questions in the comments. You can also ring us. We'll put a number on the screen, as well as if you want to intervene through audio-visual means, we can send you a link where you can come and ask your questions on video. We're talking about the high rate of vaccine hesitancy within African Australian communities. And I have with me Dr. Kalumba Kongolo and Dr. Jean Pascal. They are both African Australian doctors who've been practicing in Australia for quite some time. Yeah, I'll come back to you in a moment, Dr. Jean-Pascal. I'll take one more question from members of the audience. Jonasi, I think, no, actually, Kitui says, it is known that Pfizer vaccine is about 98% effective in preventing or reducing COVID-19 complications or hospitalization compared to AstraZeneca, which is about 64%. Why has the Australian government pushed for people to take AstraZeneca?
Yeah, so I'll quickly finish the question about the variant, and someone was saying that why are we fighting the variant, because the variant, we can have another variant that could be resistant.
Yeah.
The apparition of variant, we cannot control. We can control to stop the variant by vaccinating patients, because if you have less infection, you have less multiplication of the virus and less variant happening. And also the variant that happen is not that the virus has a brain to say that, okay, I need to mutate to this shape so that I can escape. It's happened randomly. So there could be other random variants that are inefficient and that are not infecting the people. Now, the question about Pfizer and AstraZeneca. So a vaccine that has an efficacy of more than 50% is a good vaccine. Now, they've been, I think AstraZeneca have been unlucky in Australia, because in the world, in a sense, because of that rare complication and bad publicity against it. But countries like UK have widely used AstraZeneca, and they're coming out of the lockdown. Australia, there are a lot of people who are using AstraZeneca. In fact, I watched the news today. A lot of young people are using AstraZeneca. That side effect about the clotting is a very rare side effect. As Dr. Kalumba said, if you have one case in a million, it doesn't mean that the vaccine is a bad vaccine. They're equally good vaccine. And in fact, AstraZeneca is cheaper, and handling AstraZeneca with the cold chain is much easier, because it doesn't need a lot of low temperature to be used as opposed to Pfizer, which is expensive, more new tech vaccine, but they are equally efficacious, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Kombi, you want to say
You
something?
mean to add a little bit? No, I just saying. I mean, the question was why the Australian government decided. I think there was probably, if we go back when the vaccine started coming out, or there's some news or paper or publication about the vaccine, I think the Oxford, AstraZeneca, and the Serum Indian Institute, I think they were the one to come out first to say, I think our work is promising. And most of the people in the world were rushing to get deal done to get some vaccine. I think in Australia, I'm just trying to think that Australia having a good relationship with UK. They basically bought a lot of order a lot of vaccine from AstraZeneca, and there was a deal that can also be made in Melbourne, which is happening now. But when Pfizer came in, of course, I think they were a way to see, okay, the person who asked the question is right. So Pfizer cover more than AstraZeneca is true. But as Jean-Pascal said, if you can cover more than 50%, but most importantly, AstraZeneca cover almost close to 100% against death. So most vaccine, regardless of the efficacy, they almost prevent death and severe disease, which is good. So that's the main important point.
However, we've seen lately that a significant number of people dying of COVID have been double vaccinated, and that number is actually growing. What's happening?
No, it's not true. So if you look at the number, so you go to the United States, there are some states where unvaccinated, many unvaccinated, and some states are vaccinated, fully vaccinated. Those unvaccinated has significantly higher rate of hospital admissions, significantly higher rate of death compared to less than 0.01% death on vaccinated place and hospital admission. So it's not true. So vaccinated people are still far better in terms of hospital admissions and in terms of death.
Yeah, that's true in general. But my point was that the number of people dying of COVID who are vaccinated has been increasing based on what I've read, including in India or even in Indonesia, perhaps in the US and UK, it's a little different. But in Indonesia, for example, where there's a significant number of people who are dying, many of them have been vaccinated, and as in India as well. So that proportion of people who are doubly vaccinated and who are still dying of the disease is apparently growing. Now, I'm not a specialist. I just wanted to make sure you guys
So
can
I'll take
address
this
that.
with, I wouldn't take this with, because like vaccination rates in India is still running fully vaccinated, below 10%. So I'll be surprised to say that people who are fully vaccinated who got 2 doses are dying more than people who are vaccinated. So again, there's a question of data here, where the data are coming from, or are they accurate or not. I'm saying this because even if you when we hear from what's happening in Africa, because that's someone is standing, just died, is corona. So there are things which you can't. Some other places the diagnosis is not even clear what the person really died from. But in a place like in the US, there was 1,200 people reported death, okay, from a vaccine. After review of data and autopsy, they found that only 700 could be related to vaccine, and what that represents about 0.01 to 9%.
Well,
So,
at the same token, though, in terms of data, there has been a number of reports indicating that a lot of people who have died, who died of disease unrelated to COVID, in many countries, those diseases have been counted as related to COVID, which actually fuels some of the so-called conspiracy theory out there, when there's sort of a push in many countries to count death, that are not related to COVID as related. And even in Australia here, there's been the point, including by people such as Clive Palmer or whoever else, was saying that people are dying with COVID as opposed to dying of COVID, but they all counted as dying with COVID. What do you say?
Yeah, but they still review the data. That was our preliminary data comes. If you remember in the UK, they review data. So after the regulatory agency, they will review data to make sure that this was a died of COVID, died of COVID. Some will never know if there was no autopsy, but the data reviewed the regular basis and updated. So for the country who have good data system, they do review the data of death, because of death, and they review and they will publish the updated data. Oh.
One thing I wanted to add, like in Sydney now, in New South Wales, sorry, there are 61 patients in ICU with COVID in intensive care. Only one has had 1 dose of vaccination. The rest were unvaccinated. So it's quite striking to show that the vaccine is working in preventing severe disease. Immunization is the way to go, I think.
All right, let's talk about.
Just to make it clear before we move, because this is a very important point. Vaccine prevent death and hospital admission. That there's no doubt about it. So that's been established in many countries.
Okay, we get that point. Let's talk about what is often referred to as conspiracy theory, which may or may not be. Obviously, there's quite a lot of these theories out there, but they're also quite legitimate issues in relation to this whole thing. Within African communities, even though there's no scientific data or anything, but we see that there's a lot of people who think that there's something more than just the medical prevention with this vaccine. There's perhaps some other agenda by some powerful people who want to push this vaccine, and people are taking it without really being fully aware of the long-term consequences. How do you address some of these so-called conspiracy theory? And actually, to add to that, one of the listeners added that, for example, in Africa, there's been 3 leaders who died of COVID. They were all anti-vaccine, but they died, which, in what he's saying, suggests that maybe someone doesn't want them to oppose some of these things, and there are powerful hands behind all this. What do you think?
Well, it's difficult to gauge minds of people. As professional, we're dealing with fact. Whether the COVID is man-made or not, the fact is we have a disease which is spreading rapidly, which is killing people. And they've done studies with the vaccine, with 30,000 people, 40,000 people. It has proven that in those experimental time that the vaccine is working. They've given 4.3 billion of vaccine. A lot of lives have been saved. A lot of people who have received the vaccine are not going into the hospital. And there's a way through that vaccination. Now, if someone tells me, well, this COVID was man-made, well, I don't have any way to prove or disprove it. Only a body of scientific people can go to Wuhan or wherever, and make that investigation. But while they are doing that investigation, mind you, that investigation can take years. We are dealing with the situation now. We are dealing with a pandemic now. So I think we should act on the pandemic and see what's the future, instead of trying to continue to think about someone have made it and is making money out of it.
Or maybe somebody may not have made it, but somebody has some sort of interest in pushing this. They're talking namely about population decrease, which has been in many of the discussions in high circles where people have been talking about reducing population. Maybe this is one of the vehicles.
Yeah, what can I say? So this debate is going to be ongoing. Just remember, I will take you back when syphilis started. The same debate between French and Italian. Who started? Where did it come from? I'm going to take you back to HIV. There's all sorts of theories about where this comes from, and we never had the answer. And in a such thing as this pandemic, in this large scale problem, there will be certainly people going to say sorts of things. We will never know. At the end of the day, we never know. What we need to focus on is what do we need to do now to stop this problem, to stop the virus, to stop the death, to protect the health system. So we will waste time. And as Pascal said, we'll never know. It may take years, and I'm confident we'll never know. We never know what will happen. It's happened with HIV. If someone saying goes from Congo, from Congo, someone saying American went to Congo and they try HIV. So there's so many theories. And I remember one of the Congress, the second Congress of HIV, there's a debate, and someone said, we'll never know this. And here today, we never know. We don't know. And this pandemic is the same. So let's waste time about where it's come from. It's a wrong pathway to go, and because we want the answer today to tomorrow. But we need to stop the virus, to focus. And for me, the most important thing now, because there's no treatment, is the vaccine. Because we know it's working.
Okay. That leads me to the question of why up to now they're only pushing for vaccination, but there's no actually treatment. There seems not to be any significant effort in actually getting proper treatment for the COVID. Even some of the chloroquine treatment previously that apparently in some countries it was working based on the data that was published, but in other countries this has been pushed aside, and there seems that it's all about vaccine, not treatment. Why is this the case?
Yeah, so because just remember that, so for people not from medical background, most of viruses they're always difficult to treat. So often there'll be self-limited conditions. This vaccine, there'll be a lot of effort, a lot of research going on, a lot of research. But if you understand how the virus kills, you can imagine how difficult it could be to come with some sort of therapy. Because basically the virus will attach to one of the receptors on your lung and dysregulate one of the system we call SCE2. And then dysregulate the whole system of inflammation, so it increases your inflammation. that increase your risk of getting clot. So those people who have low ACE2, such as the diabetic or those who are old or with obesity, will be at high risk because that's how the virus acts. And it's very difficult to come to with HRP. And people will try. The research is ongoing, but it's hard because of the way the virus is acting. So, but the vaccine is easy to figure out how can you prevent, because we know that that virus will introduce itself using the S protein to attach to your lung cell. So by trying to get antibody against that spike protein, so it's easy to say, okay, if we do that, we prevent, the virus making the disease or attaching to your lung cells. So the principles are different. So that's why it's more easy to think about vaccine, because if we understand the virus, we're lucky because of technology, because the sequencing of this virus just took, a few months for it to be finalized. For HIV, we waited for such a long time, but we know the sequencing, genetic sequencing, and people were able to say, okay, if we target this particular part of the virus, which allow the virus to enter to attach to your lung cell, then we may prevent disease. So that's probably why you think that people are pushing for the vaccine, and that prevents the community altogether.
Okay,
maybe I can add on the explanation of sequencing. Sequencing essentially just mean they give you the composition of the virus. Just also to add, in medicine, prevention is better than cure. If you listen to what Dr. Kalumba have said, so a journey of a patient with COVID in ICU, it's a very heavy one. So the patient is intubated, so they put a tube in his lung to breathe for that patient. But in the meantime, his body is dysregulated. So you need to give him fluid, you need to give him antibiotics. They might stay there maybe 10 days or 15 days. It costs a lot of money. The bill can be in 1,000. But with prevention, with a vaccine, which is $3 for AstraZeneca, maybe 15 or 20 for Pfizer, it's much cheaper and much more effective. And you're acting before the complications happen. So vaccination is the way to go, I think.
Yeah, but apparently, if you treat
Yep.
the early enough, then you avoid some of these escalation up to the ICU. But we have about 10 minutes to go. I wanted to focus.
But just to complete it, just
Yeah.
remember that we don't have a treatment yet. So a person with COVID, there's no treatment yet. And for us who work in Africa and here, we can see what the vaccine has made, what difference, how huge difference vaccine has made in children, because it's reduced mortality significantly if you compare from the kid in Africa versus here, because here they've used the vaccine to eliminate some of the disease.
Okay, for the next 10 minutes that we have, I'm going to try to talk about the increasing push that we're getting to actually make the vaccination mandatory. That is, we see that, for example, in France, it's starting to really become like that. You can't access public spaces without having a vaccine pass or a test of COVID that is less than 72, about 72 hours, all that sort of thing. And that even on here in Australia, there was an article published in The Age where a doctor was suggesting that it should be as it's mandatory in the same way we have seatbelts mandatory. Do you guys think that is the right way to go as doctors?
Oh, it's a difficult topic. It's a difficult question. But I just want people to put a public face on the disease. So think about yourself first. If you go out and contract COVID and come back at your place, as African family, even in Australia, we live with many generations together with our mother, our grandmother, and our children together. You pass that disease to your mother or to your children, and one of them pass away. So that's a face that you put to the disease. How will you feel if they said that because obviously you got the vaccine, you contracted the COVID from someone who was infected, who had the COVID. How will you feel if they say the COVID vaccination should be mandatory because it has been shown to decrease the rate of transmission, to decrease hospitalization, and to decrease death, to stop death? How will you feel about it? That how I put that question to people. Obviously, human right is there. We cannot deny that. But there have been times where legislation have been changed. Just for the COVID, for instance, the army have been given extra power to stop people on the street if you don't have mask and fine you. Those are changing legislation because that have not happened before. Someone might tell you that it's against human rights for me to put to oblige me to put a mask. So it's a difficult conversation to have, but I think it's a conversation to have. I've discussed that with Dr. Kalumba before. I think pushing for a mandatory vaccination it's a good move to try and alleviate the collaterals side problem.
Dr. Kalumba, before you address that,
go on. Yeah.
I'll let you do it, but I add one more thing. Dr. Jean-Pascal seems to suggest that it could be a good move, but how do you balance that with medical ethics, where you can't really force, treatment or prevention to anybody who doesn't want to be treated or given any prevention tool? Ethically speaking, how do you conciliate that?
Yeah. So even when there's ethics, there's sometimes things around ethics. I'll give you an example. We had cases where a child would come in who's got two-parent Jehovah's Witness, and the child we had one case at the Royal Children's Hospital. The child was dying with a very low hemoglobin level, needed blood transfusion, and the parents said no. Okay, but the ethics, they said no, you can't do anything. But because we want to save life, there's a mechanism where at least a number of consultants or 3 consultants can come, even 2, and sign against. If they say, look, we want to save life, yes, we're going to go around that ethics. So in terms of vaccination, I think most people will agree that 70-80%, that's what we need to reach. I was going through data today. Most European countries, they're around 50 fully vaccinated, or most Western countries, apart from Australia, we see behind, of course, but they're around 50-60% of fully vaccinated. Okay, where and I've known that they will reach 70-80%, but in some certain profession, like you are in the health industry, you are a frontline for quarantine, you need to be vaccinated. This is mandatory. It should be mandatory. But again, I agree with it. So at some point, we need to think. For me, particularly for Africa back home, where most countries are running 0.1% of the fully vaccinated, 0.1.
Doctor, I'm still struggling. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm still struggling to understand in the context where the vaccine doesn't prevent you from passing on the virus or even getting it. Why make it mandatory will be justified?
Because it can make you sick. It will prevent you getting severely sick or death. So
that's your decision as a person individually. I would understand to protect the community. There must be some sort of decisions there that even when the individual doesn't want to cooperate, but for the sake of protecting the community, we could potentially look at some sort of. But if the vaccine doesn't prevent somebody from passing it on, therefore it becomes mostly just a personal issue of whether you want to take the risk or not, because it doesn't have any sort of positive effect on the community.
What about your seatbelt? Who does it protect?
Well, the seatbelts, you don't die, and this is a point I discussed with someone previously. For example, that analogy of seatbelt. When you put your seatbelt on, you don't die from putting it on, but you can die from having just
not putting
vaccine.
it on. They will find you, but they will find you because you don't put it on.
My point is this, doctor. Seatbelt does protect you and the community. That's all okay. However, if you make vaccine mandatory and there's a risk for people to die just for being vaccinated, and there's zero risk for someone to die just for putting the seatbelt on. That's two things that are not exactly the same. If you put your seatbelt on, you're not going to die just for putting it on. There's no zero chance of that. But if you get vaccinated, you may die, even though the chances are still small, but they are there. So it's a different situation, isn't it?
But when we achieve the community immunity is when 78% are vaccinated. So your virus, you are taking out of your community, you're not going to be circulating because people are not getting sick. So that's the same principle. So everyone has a contribution to make for that. So if people said we don't want, and 50% of your population said you don't want to get vaccinated, they don't want to kick the virus out. If you want to be moving around, the people die from it.
Well, I think it will make a lot of difference if the virus was preventing transmission, because that would mean, okay, you some point you have to stop that chain of transmission. But the vaccine doesn't prevent the virus from being transmitted.
No,
so even
if you immunize enough people, 78%, you get it out. So you cover your immunity. That's the principle.
In theory, but we've seen some people, some countries have been quite highly immunized, but they still have problem with COVID.
But no country will achieve that percentage of fully vaccinated. If you go through the map, Google map, and put the vaccine, it will tell you, if you put the country, it will tell you how much percentage. So no country, I'm not talking about 1 dose, I'm talking about fully immunized 2 doses. So no country so far has achieved 70% of fully vaccinated people. And we still have a pocket of people. Yep.
The Seychelles had 80%, as far as I remember. Fully vaccinated. As far as I remember, anyway. I don't trust my data because I'm not scientific. I think they had.
So that's the same principle. If you look at let's say like measles, all these polio, that's why they were eliminated. So by vaccinated number of people, and the country where there was no large scale, like in Africa, we still have measles. We still have some of the disease. We don't have it here. So we need to get the cooperation of people to get that number higher and to get the virus out.
Well, we're getting to the end of this first edition of African Knowledge, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to conclude. What sort of message would you like to give to the community out there, given that, as we said initially, there's still a quite high rate of vaccine hesitancy within the community? A lot of people are still not comfortable taking the virus for a number of, the vaccine for a number of reasons. Given everything you've said, that the virus is quite safe, it does help to reduce hospitalization. It reduces the chance of somebody dying from the disease, and also increase protection for the community. What would you like to be able to tell those who still don't feel very comfortable because the virus is still not proven to be 100% safe and it doesn't quite really protect them 100%?
I think you have summed it very well. My short message will be: get vaccinated.
And if they say, why should I get vaccinated? What do you answer?
We have discussed this at length over an hour now. So by vaccinating yourself, you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your family, you're protecting the community, you are participating in keeping Australia safe and the economy moving and the hospital not being strained. But get vaccinated.
Dr. Kalumba?
Yeah. So my message will say, look, vaccines save life. And it has been a big achievement. And the only weapon we have for this pandemic at the moment is to get vaccinated. There will still be side effects, there will still be accident, there will still be death. As long as they are rare, they are minimal in number. By getting vaccinated, we protect, as Dr. Jean-Pascal said, ourselves against severe disease and death, the family, particularly the elderly, was at risk, and protect the health system and the community. And for message for me for Africa has no way out, only if they get the vaccine right, like for this coronavirus pandemic. Africa should understand that they need the leaders to understand they need to push the vaccine to the people, even if you have to make it mandatory, you have to do so. Because I remember the Belgians did that in Congo, and were far better than South Africa. We didn't have so. Yep. If you don't do that of this speed, where they are running at 0.10%, while the Western country are at this 50% of fully vaccinated, will continue to suffer from corona. And
we're pretty much out of time now, but I'm going to take just a couple minutes to one last question that somebody asked before, which I think is relevant. They said that many of these tests for the vaccine have been done in the West, and that's often the case anyway, where the sample of the population is mostly Westernized, and there's not much of a diversity or inclusion for the rest of the world population, like in Africa. Does that have any implication or any effect? The fact that in the development of the vaccine, very little of the African biology and all that sort of thing, even though there's one human biology, but there may be some differences out there that need to be accounted.
Yeah, no, it's not true, because like some of the trials done in South Africa, so some of them is in South America, there's some in Europe. So South Africa is one participating. The reason probably why South Africa has been participating in this, because they've got some system which can provide accurate data, and that's important, because some of the African country, it can maybe be just data record is a problem, and the follow-up probably that's a problem. But most of the vaccine anyway has been out of Africa, has been done in Europe anyway. I don't know any vaccine which came from Africa, but South Africa has been involved with Johnson & Johnson vaccine and AstraZeneca vaccine. That's why even they said it was not covering South African variant. That's why they stopped in South Africa using AstraZeneca. So they were involved. Yeah.
Okay.
So in the US, they were African American in the Pfizer trial. So it's not an issue.
Okay, that's all we've got time for today. I want to say thank you to Dr. Kalumba Kongolo, who is a pediatrician based in Melbourne, and Dr. Tshamala Jean Pascal, who is based in Sydney. Thank you for your time to Africa Media Tonight, and we hope to be able to do more of these sort of conversations and discussions in the next few weeks, because obviously the issue of the virus and everything that relates to it, lockdowns and everything, is still impacting the community significantly, and it's important to communicate around these issues so that people are very clear and they get correct information, as opposed to everything else that is circulating in social media and other platforms. So thank you for all who've been watching. We thank you for your participation, those who ask questions. From now on, there will be a daily show on African knowledge, and we invite you to share what you know and contribute to improving the capital knowledge within the community that improves welfare and progress in our community. Until next time, stay blessed and have a good night for tonight. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Pascal. Thank you, Dr. Kalumba. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.